Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Hello and welcome to a special Between Takes episode of Missing Frames. I'm your host, Shawn Eastridge. Normally, on Missing Frames, we watch all the movies we should have seen by this point in our lives. But today, we have a very special interview for you. I had the chance to catch up with Natalie Metzger, the producer behind such films as Thunder Road, Greener Grass, and Jim Cummings' upcoming feature, The Werewolf. We chat a little bit about life as an independent film producer in the wake of just the insanity of COVID-19. We also talk about the future of the industry in general and her unique perspective as an independent film producer. Are there any positives to come out of this experience? We also talk about her short science fiction film, Immortal, and just the challenges of submitting it to a bunch of festivals only to have a lot of those festivals change their shape or postpone or cancel outright. So feel free to check out her website, rarefatal.com. That's RAREFATAL.com if you want to learn more about her and her work. And without further delay, let's get to the conversation. Hope you enjoy. How is everything with you? Are you doing okay? Like, this is... I guess my real question is, what stage of Jack Nicholson in The Shining are you at right now in your life?
I mean, it's interesting. It's actually, I wish things were slower, honestly. I wish that, I have a lot of friends, especially like crew members from productions that are like, yeah, we can't do our job, so things are really slow. But things have been really busy on my end. I have 3 different features in post-production right now, as well as a docu-series. And on top of that, we have 2 films that are in pre-production and then several more projects in development. And so
you kind of looked out a little bit, it sounds like, as far as projects on the table, because I know there were a few things in post when we last chatted at Sundance in January, but that is kind of awesome. I was going to ask what was going on with everything and if you were able to keep working during all this.
Yeah, I mean, we ended up being extremely lucky. We were shooting a movie in upstate New York from January 5th to March 10th. We wrapped literally days before the lockdown. We flew back to LA March 10th. And so we got it in the can, which was literally perfect timing, because then once the lockdown went into effect, it wasn't that big of a deal because all of our post and editing could happen, remotely. Like our editor and director have just been working together via like Zoom and this program called Evercast. And then, and like we've been reviewing cuts. They've just been like sending us links, and like the producers will like review cuts and then give feedback through Frame.io. And it's all been actually very easy, and it hasn't slowed down post-production at all. So that film is still on schedule,
Which one is that?
Exciting. It's called Werewolves Within. We partnered with Ubisoft, the video game company, for it.
Oh.
Yeah, and it's starring Sam Richardson from Veep and Milana Van Traub from This Is Us. And a bunch of other just like great, amazing folks like Michaela Watkins and Cheyenne Jackson. And yeah, I'm really excited about that one. It's with director Josh Rubin, whose film Scare Me premiered at Sundance this year.
For a second, I thought you said whose films scare me. They just scare me. And I'm like, well, that's a good thing if it's a werewolf movie and it's supposed to be scary. That's probably for the best.
It's a horror comedy. It definitely skews more towards comedy than horror, which we really love. Josh is one of the funniest people I've ever met. So we are constantly laughing watching these cuts.
Have you experienced any moral dilemmas doing Werewolves Within and The Werewolf, which is Jim's movie?
It is no moral dilemmas, but there definitely are some like clarification dilemmas. There's definitely been like a couple people that are like, oh, is this a sequel? And I'm like, nope, completely different movie, completely different director, completely different writer, completely different script, completely different genre even.
You should just mess with me. You should just be like, it absolutely is. We decided to film the film and its sequel at the same time. You're really revolutionizing filmmaking in general by doing this.
Yeah, I mean, it is funny. I do have some slight concerns of being pigeonholed as like the werewolf producer, but
and then there's the beta test as well. That's also in post right now, but everything is moving along, it sounds like.
Yeah. So beta test with Jim Cummings and PJ McCabe, that is Coming to the end of post, we're hoping to be locking picture in the next couple weeks. That one should be done by this summer. And then we'll actually be locking picture on Werewolves Within also this summer and finishing it up. So we'll have some projects to go out with. Like, I think like the big question right now is what's happening with festivals, what's happening with distributors. And so that's a little bit of the wild, wild west that we're trying to navigate right now. It seems like no one is sure what's going to happen. No one knows right now if Sundance is going to happen or if it's going to happen, to the same scale that it normally does.
Right.
So I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, that's great. I was going to ask, how are I mean, everything is affected by this, but these are films that were, I know the Werewolf was going to be released theatrically, and then Werewolves Within and the beta test, I assume, we're going to be released theatrically as well. To what extent have these releases been affected? Are they going to be just like VOD or things like that?
So we're still planning on theatrical for all of them, but we understand that we might have to pivot, depending on what the state of theaters is, what the state of festivals is. Like Werewolf is, was supposed to do a few festivals before, releasing at the end of the year. So we'll see what happens with that. It's all a bit of a question mark. I think we'll know more over the course of the next month as things start to open up and we see how people respond and we see if there's a, second wave or a spike or all those things. And it's the same thing with like going back into production. Like we're just constantly asking questions about, when will it be safe to go into production? What things need to be in place to do that.
Are you all basically sitting and you're like, all right, let's see if Christopher Nolan releases his movie in July, as somehow that became the flagship or kind of the banner waver for like what is going to happen this year with movies?
It is. It really is. I mean, that's what we've heard from several distributors is like, well, let's wait and see what Tenet does and then make a plan from there. I mean, and there are plans in place, like we're still planning on like theatrical and are working towards certain calendar dates. But we also know that depending on how Tenet goes, like we might adjust. And, and there's also some like new things that are popping up that are kind of cool and fun, like drive-in theaters and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And, we'll just have to see like what people go to, what plays well, what the audience is wanting to do and where they want to go.
What kind of conversations are being had in terms of just the future of production? I mean, how are you feeling? Are you feeling optimistic about things? Maybe I've read a couple things just about like big blockbusters, I think, are off the table for this year as far as ones going into production. I read something that said they will not be going into production until 2021. But on the flip side, this same article also said, independent features might still be able to do their thing. As somebody who is producing independent film, how optimistic are you about it? Like, what are you personally feeling? Like, do you think that's a realistic thing to say, or is it still too soon to tell?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have swung the pendulum, like, and we go back and forth, and it's hard to know. At first, we were really excited because we were like, listen, like we are the kind of production that can go, back first because we already do so many of the things that they are putting in place now as like safety precautions. Like we have smaller crews, like we're used to, like different departments like wearing multiple hats and, and juggling a lot. And, how do you pull off a lighting scheme with, only a couple G&E people? Okay, well, do we schedule like a day for pre-light? Do we do those things? And, that's already how we kind of work. So we were actually really excited that we were like, oh, well, we're actually the ones that know how to do this.
Yeah.
But like, I think it all depends on what comes down with like SAG and the unions as well.
Yeah.
Like SAG recently sent out something that said that their members can't sign anything that waives away liability from the producers regarding COVID. And so that essentially makes it impossible for independent producers to make anything because they're personally liable if any of the actors get COVID. And right. The issue with that is that you can do all the precautions. You can have everyone wear masks. You can keep like 6 feet distance between all the crew. You can have like limited or like modular crews that, Art comes in one day and then doesn't come back, and Jeannie comes in one day and doesn't come back. And you can limit all of that interaction. But if one person goes somewhere and interacts with someone outside of set, like we can't protect and guarantee, what people do outside, even if we're providing like a hotel space or like a quarantine space for everyone to stay. And so I don't know any of my fellow producers that are willing to be personally liable for that. And so I think until SAG adjusts that wording, I don't know any indie producers that are going to take that responsibility, or rather, studios for that matter.
Yeah.
But I think that there are definitely guidelines and precautions that should be demanded and in place, to make sure that, everyone is being as safe, and thoughtful as possible. And again, I do think that, smaller indie productions can be a little bit more nimble with that stuff. The question is, for like the more cost prohibitive things of like, well, if we have to pay everyone an additional 2 weeks at the beginning of the shoot to quarantine, that's like 2 weeks of pay that for an indie production, is very tough. And so we're trying to figure out, how to, take that into account with our budgets, and, how to go back to distributors, who are greenlighting things and saying like, hey, we need these extra funds specifically for, COVID protection. So yeah, I mean, it's all a delicate balance, and we're figuring out what's possible. But I mean, productions are already starting back up in other states. I mean, Tyler Perry is starting to shoot, and and we've heard word about other productions that are planning on going, shooting even as early as June.
Just come hang out in Georgia. There's nothing. We're like, what? It's only been a couple weeks. Nah, just open everything back up. So it's perfect for film production.
I'm part of a producers group. There's like 12 of us, like different producers from all different segments of the industry. And we have a weekly Zoom call, but we just kind of talk about all this stuff. And we talk about the ethics of, what are the ethics of asking someone to work, or like, what are the ethics of like providing a job for someone? And it's this like really tough balance of like, well, you don't want to pressure anyone to like work when they're not comfortable, but also if they need the job, then like, is it our responsibility to like try to move things forward? It's this very delicate thing. And the whole group kind of, spans the spectrum of like some people saying they won't shoot until there's a vaccine.
Right.
And, and others saying like, yeah, I'll go back as soon as the lockdown is lifted. Like, I need the funds, or, or like we just need to start, figuring this out.
This is the big dilemma in general. And there are so many cons, but on the flip side, do you see anything like any outcomes that are actually positive, like coming out on the other end of this saying like, oh, wow, that actually made things better?
For sure. I mean, there's lots of things I'm actually really excited about. One of the most important things is that there's a lot of talk now of doing 10-hour days instead of 12-hour days, as being kind of like industry standard, because the idea is that, even when you're working a 12-hour day, you still like are, commuting back home, or, there's still like always follow-up things to do, or like prep to do for the next day. And so, when you're shooting, people tend to be so exhausted. They're like running themselves low. They're like running their immune systems down. And so this idea of like, great, well, let's keep everyone healthy and, keep their immune systems strong during production. It seems like a basic thing that I feel like other industries have already implemented, but like the film industry still like, we try to get as much as possible within a shoot day. And like, obviously you want to be, efficient with time and money. But I think something as basic as making a 10-hour workday industry standard instead of 12 is going to do wonders just for everyone's like sanity and health moving forward. So I'm excited that that's on the table and something that's being discussed. And then I think just the idea of, I think it's going to change how we're approaching crew positions and roles. I think technology has been changing so much, and there's so much that can be achieved with fewer people. And so I think this is actually going to really force people to look at, at the crew and be like, okay, great. Well, like, these two positions like should actually be like connected, and we actually need this other position that we haven't even thought of before. But I think it's just that like that shakeup that allows people to look at something from a new perspective. And I think that always brings an element of, progress. It's something that at Vanishing Angle, we've we've tried to do on a lot of our productions. For example, on the Werewolf, we were shooting in Utah, and we were shooting pretty far outside of the city, about like 45 minutes outside of the city. And so we knew that our crew was commuting quite a bit. And so we forced 11-hour workdays instead of 12, just to give that, that extra hour of like people commuting, making sure that people, were safe, that they weren't too exhausted driving back after a long shoot day. And we were able to, to pull it off even within a limited budget. And I think when everyone is on board and is working towards that goal, you might have to do 1 or 2 additional shoot days, but it also means that people will work really hard within that given time. And I think that there are ways to approach some of those additional days of like, okay, great. Like, is this day like a drone day, or is this day like a process trailer day, or, like, is there, that like maybe has a more limited crew. So it's not, as expensive. You're not just like adding additional shoot days that are, all the same cost. But I think, it's possible to do even with a limited budget. And so, I think something that's also really important to us at Vanishing Angle is that low budget indies don't have to abuse the crew.
Right.
You don't have to have everyone killing themselves in order to pull off something that's really high production value for a low cost. And that's really important to us because we're all about long-term relationships with our crews and our filmmakers. But I think if that's starting from the top down, and if everyone is on board with like, cool, like let's figure out what needs to happen in order for us to pull off these like shorter days, I think that it's achievable.
Let's switch gears and talk about the fact that you co-wrote and co-directed a short film, and you didn't even tell me about it. I thought you were just wearing one hat, the producer hat, and you're like, no, I'm good with producing. But no, you have this short film, Immortal. Tell me about this. How did this start? You co-wrote and co-directed it with Robert Allaire. Am I pronouncing that right?
Robert Allaire.
Of course I'm not pronouncing it right, because that's a thing I do. I like to do this on my show. I just mispronounce all the names. So I apologize, Robert, if you're listening. But, well, tell me, where did this idea come from? It's science fiction. So is that like a go-to genre for you, or is this something that's a little outside your wheelhouse? What were the origins of this?
Yeah, so I'm a total sci-fi nerd, and like it's funny because I've yet to produce a film like a sci-fi film.
That's what I was gonna say. Based on what you've done, I was kind of like, oh, sci-fi, all right, cool.
But I love that genre. I love sci-fi books. Like I'm like a huge bookworm. Like love science fiction. I really love sci-fi short stories. So it's just something that I'm a big fan of, and I also just love science and technology in general. I'm always like reading about what the newest advances are and things. But yeah, this project came out of Bob and I actually wrote a feature script for Immortal that won the Page Screenwriting Awards. It won the Gold Prize.
Oh, awesome!
And so after it won, it was just kind of something fun that we were playing with. It's a concept that I'm just fascinated by, which is life extension. This idea of curing aging or like extending like the human lifespan.
Yeah.
And there's so much actual science research being done around it. And Elizabeth Blackburn won the Nobel Prize for her discovery of telomeres and telomerase, which is like this like little cap to the end of your DNA strand that is like very closely associated to aging. It actually shortens over the course of your life. And if you can extend it, like keep it long, you can actually stop aging in rats.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so there's there's all this like fascinating science around it, but like I didn't hear people like really talking about it in the mainstream. And so I did this like deep dive and like was reading all these books. And so Bob and I wrote this feature script. It ended up winning this award, which was very unexpected. And then we were like, okay, great. Well, like, what do we want to do with this? And then it was right after that I started like producing projects like back to back to back. And when I just didn't have time to like focus on it or, do any revisions or anything. And so a few years went by of just like not working on it. And then we finally started digging in last year. And we were like, why don't we adapt it into a short and just make the short just for fun? And it can be a proof of concept, for the feature, and also just like a way for us to explore the characters in a more in-depth way. And so, yeah, we wrote this short script. It's a very different genre and storyline from the feature, but it features the same characters and the same science concepts. And so, yeah, we made it towards the end of last year. I think it was October. And we went through posts and everything, and then started sending it out. And of course, it's been getting into festivals, but the festivals have been canceling.
Right. Perfect timing.
I know. It's like, it's kind of this like weird thing of like, oh, okay, great. Like, especially for short films, like really, the only place to feature them is festivals. And so
right.
That's been an interesting thing. But luckily, like some festivals, are still happening, or they're turning virtual, or some have just postponed to like later in the year. And so, yeah, so we'll be announcing a lot of festival announcements over the course of the next few months. But yeah, it's kind of like my passion project, my baby. And we started digging into the feature again, and we've done a really big rewrite, and are starting to cast and crew up and do all the things.
Nice. I was going to ask if this, because it seemed like one of the things I learned at Sundance, which I feel like it should have been common knowledge, but I didn't realize how many people were making shorts for the specific purpose of like, hey, go to Sundance, get your short in, and maybe get a feature finance.
We've had a lot of success with like the kind of short to feature model, with
right.
like with Lumber Road and with Greener Grass, and and even we have this like short to feature lab at Vanishing Angle, that we do that.
Yeah.
And so that was part of it, and it was meant to be a proof of concept. But what's lucky is that we also have just great relationships with distributors and financiers already. And so the festival laurels and stuff, they are great to have, and we'll be, getting more of them as festivals start happening again, which is nice. But really it's just about sending the short directly to the people that we're talking with about the feature.
Right.
And it was also more like a kind of personal exploration of like, well, let's get to know these characters and stuff, because it is a very different genre. So like the short is kind of like a sci-fi drama, and the feature is a sci-fi thriller, and like almost like pushes more into like, there's like some horror elements and stuff that are very much not in the short. So it was a way for us to, explore the concept, and like festivals are great and exciting. And we hope that we're actually going to be able to physically attend more as like physically happen. But for now, like I just got an email this morning for a festival that they're like, great, we're going to do a recorded Zoom Q&A, to happen after the virtual screenings. And I'm like, okay, great. Like whatever we need to do at this point.
I mean, I'm glad. I mean, things like this, we're using Zoom. I feel like technology has created this incredible means to still connect with each other. And obviously it's not the ideal way, but I'm so happy you can still kind of get this stuff out there and do stuff like that. I want to know, who are some of your biggest influences as far as sci-fi go?
Oh man. It's funny because I wouldn't call him like a sci-fi filmmaker, but I really like Darren Aronofsky. Obviously love Chris Nolan. Love Ridley Scott. I really am fascinated by sci-fi that's exploring, either elements of real life science that, it's just like cool in my mind to explore that in like a narrative form of like what different science things can do. But like also like, sci-fi is such a great form for social commentary, for political commentary.
Yeah.
It's just slightly outside of the normal world. And so audiences are able to like look at it with a fresh perspective, rather than it being too close to home where like they can't see the connections. Alex Garland is also a huge influence.
Yeah, he's great.
Love all of his work.
So what kind of stuff, as you're kind of locked down, what are you you're busy, which is great. Do you find yourself with any more downtime? Are you able to relax a little bit? Like, are you watching anything? Are you reading anything right now that's kind of helping to take your mind off what's going on?
I've been really busy, like back to back, but I've been trying to be better about work-life balance. And so just like trying to, actually like set aside time to exercise, which is really important to me. And then I've also been trying to watch a movie every night.
That's awesome.
So yeah, those have been like the two big things.
Anything good?
I just watched Bad Education the other night, which
one is that one?
good. So it just came out on HBO. It's with
Okay.
Allison Janney, and
Is this Hugh Jackman? Yes.
Yeah.
Someone was telling me this is great.
It's really good, and like all based on this like true story about the superintendent in Long Island of this school superintendent. Would highly recommend that.
I think I'm still very distraught that I haven't gotten to see a new James Bond movie yet. That's been pushed back to November, and I'm very sad. I'm really hoping for Tenet to come out in July. I am not optimistic about it, but is there any particular film you're really looking forward to that you really, really hope you get to see this year in theaters?
I mean, I would say Tenet is it's definitely on the list. I'm just such a big fan of his work, and anything exploring like time or like weird things in the mind, like I don't know, I just love that kind of stuff. So that would probably be the one I would say.
Have you seen any Tarkovsky? This is a tangent, I'm sorry.
I've seen his version of Solaris.
Yeah, I was gonna say, just he's very interesting. I just started watching his movies. Solaris is good. Stalker is probably my favorite. That's another sci-fi, and he's an interesting filmmaker in general. Like I kept falling asleep during Stalker. Maybe I shouldn't say that as a film fan. Maybe I loved it, but I would start it late at night, and I'd get about 30 or 40 minutes and fall asleep. And then I would watch it in like 40-minute chunks until I finally got through the movie. But it's fascinating and incredible. Solaris is another one, and then his other films are a little bit more reflective and about his childhood and kind of dreams and memories and things like that. But those two in particular, I would definitely recommend. I don't know what you've thought about Solaris, but I like Stalker more than that, if that's any consolation.
Yeah, no, I feel like people have told me to watch Stalker several times. It's like it's been on my list for forever, and I just haven't had a chance to watch it yet. But
you have to be in the right mood, honestly. Like I think Tarkovsky's amazing, but you do have to kind of be willing to put yourself in that headspace where you're like, okay, I kind of got to sit here and be ready for this experience. But
yeah, I've seen the Sacrifice as well. Have you seen that film?
I haven't seen that one. I just watched The Mirror for the first time.
I haven't seen that one.
It's like reflections of his childhood, just things of like his mother seeing her life through his eyes, and there's a really sweet exchange like where his mother met his father, like they were sitting on a fence and the fence broke, and just like very not surreal, but like just sort of dreamy, no narrative, just kind of these little pieces of memories. It's really cool. He's not someone I would even like call a sci-fi filmmaker, but he's made two of the most influential science fiction films ever. So very interesting guy. But Natalie, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I really hope that we can meet again at a future festival someday. I think that will happen. It's only a matter of when. But I wish you best of luck, and I hope everything goes well.
Yes, thank you so much. Great chatting.